What does an avoidant ex really think when you go radio silent on them? The first thing that happens is that at first they feel relief. Now, this tends to be very confusing to someone who's going through this because you would believe that someone, when you go radio silent, would essentially realize the magnitude of potentially losing someone like you because they've grown accustomed to you reaching out to them and talking to you every day. But when it comes to an avoidant, this is the exact opposite because avoidants associate closeness with pressure. So whenever you are trying to talk to them or try to work through these things, which is normal in most relationships with someone who doesn't have this attachment style, they essentially look at this as a threat to their emotional well-being because they don't want to deal with this, right? They don't want to work on this essentially because they know that if they do, they're going to have to deal with the vulnerability that's going to come up in those emotions. So whenever you go silent, this essentially starts to calm them down because there's not that pressure. And because of that, they really come off as if they're thriving and they're happy, which is only going to frustrate you even more because you are over here going through such an emotional roller coaster while they seem to just be happy. But the most important thing that you need to understand at this point is that this is only temporary, and they are essentially going to realize the magnitude of this, which will be laid out as we go through this video. The second thing that you tend to see happening is that they start to wonder. Now, this is where they start to ask themselves questions like, are you really done with them? Are you moving on? What is really happening? And they're starting to realize a little bit the magnitude of you essentially going silent on them because up until this point, they've believed that you are going to be readily available for them for whenever you want to come back, and they expect that at some point in time you're going to check in on them and all these other things. But because that's no longer happening, they can only go so long with distracting themselves or pushing these thoughts or realizations down for so long because no matter who you are, you can only suppress emotions and thoughts down for so long before it's going to naturally come up and you're going to have to deal with it. And this is the point where that avoidant is starting to have that happen, and they're starting to question what is really going on and if they should be in panic to essentially try to get you back because deep down they don't want you to be completely moving on. It's just because of this avoidant attachment style that's causing them to feel the urge to push away from you. That is why they can't show up in the relationship the way that they want. So this is where they tend to start to wonder and really start to question themselves and how they are responding to you being radio silent to them. Which leads to the third thing that tends to happen, and that is curiosity replaces confidence. When we look at an avoidant, they are confident at first that they can find somebody else who's going to replace you and essentially make them feel exactly the same way that you have. But this starts to begin to diminish at this point because they start to realize how much you are valuable to them and how you are essentially perfect for them and how they would want you in their life. So because of this, they will start to do things like checking your stories or maybe even asking mutuals how you are doing or what has going on, because this is essentially their attempt to try to resolve this feeling that they're having, which is essentially anxiety, thinking about you completely moving on from them. So they're trying to do everything that they can to find some bit of evidence to make themselves feel like you're not completely moving on, or maybe this is just a stunt, or you're just needing the space away, and then you're going to at some point in time reach out to them to try to see if you can work things out. And this is often disguised as an indifference, but it's mainly a test because they're testing the waters to again see if they need to take this really seriously, or is this something that they can continue this avoidant attachment style and being pushed away from you, and you again are going to be the one to reach out to them to try to work things out, and then when they feel comfortable, they can go right back to being this avoidant, starting this cycle over and over again. And if they are not finding that evidence that you are just sitting around waiting for them and they feel comfortable with this will lead to the fourth thing that you tend to see happening, and that is their ego starts to crack. This essentially is, if your silence is consistent, their sense of superiority starts to slip because they believe that they can continue to be this way and not have any consequences of this because you have been the one trying to do everything that you possibly can to work things out and, giving your 110% of yourself to this person. And instead of seeing it for what it was, which is your love and commitment to the relationship, they take it as a sign to continue to run this avoidant attachment style, whether they are aware of this or not. And due to you responding that way up until this point, this gives them the power to continue to do that. But when you don't do that and you're consistent with that, they begin to realize that this is not a stunt, this is not something that's temporary, and they can essentially lose you altogether, which is something that they don't want because they, again, know that you are the perfect partner for them. So in this moment, they may start to try to potentially reach out to you, to breadcrumb you, to see if there's a way to kind of get you back on the hook, right? And it can be so very convincing because they can get really good at making it seem like they have done what is necessary to kind of heal from this avoidant attachment style and they're ready to finally take things seriously. This tends to be an illusion to make it seem like this, and then once they feel comfortable enough that you are not fully moved on, they will tend to go right back to that avoidance cycle because they haven't done what is necessary to actually heal from this. And the fifth and final thing that you see happen is that their avoidance cycle restarts. They will have this internal tug of war where they have thoughts like, should I reach out? But also have the thought of, what if they reject me? And because this avoidant attachment style tends to have a stronghold on them, it will do a really good job at making them feel like they need to no longer try to feel those emotions and deal with it, and they just need to do what they have done up until this point, which is to avoid things, right? And to continue to make themselves feel like they can continue to be this way, and they'll find somebody else who's either willing to do this, or at some point in time you are going to come back and they can work things out. And while this is probably not what's going to happen because you most likely are going to heal and move on from this, they are convincing themselves of this because they would rather feel that than deal with the real reality that you will essentially move on from them, right? And this can be so very frustrating because you may think after all of this, they will finally start to realize the magnitude of allowing this avoidant attachment style to just run rampant in the relationship. They'll seek professional help from a therapist and then try to actually work with you on how you guys can go about this and try to work on it. But that tends to not happen because, again, this avoidant attachment style has a strong hold on them due to their caregivers not meeting their emotional needs and them adopting this way of being and being this way for so long. So this may be leading you to question, what do I do here? And the most basic but yet complex answer to this is you continuing to go silent on them and go no contact officially. And what that means is you making sure that you are not responding to them breadcrumbing, maybe blocking them from being able to message you or call you, and on top of that, blocking them on everything with the intention of doing this for yourself and beginning to heal and move on from them, because chances are you are at your wit's end. You have done everything that you possibly could to try to help your avoidant ex see how this avoidant attachment style has really been the main issue in the relationship, and just trying to be understanding and loving and sacrificing your own needs and wants in hopes that this person will finally show up in the relationship the way that you know that they can. But at the end of the day, this is on them. There is not anything else that you can do to get them to realize this. They have to on their own. And this is why it's important for you to stick to this, because you will begin to see things how they were and not how you've been construing it due to your love and holding on to the hopes of what this relationship could be. Because at the end of the day, you owe it to yourself to put the same exact love, commitment, and care that you put into them back into yourself, and realizing the things that you do and do not want in a relationship. Because even if things were to work out with this person, who's to say that they aren't going to go back to this at some point in time? And you may be at your wit's end where you just don't want to try to engage in a relationship that seems like you have to put so much effort into it working. And again, you may love this person still, and there's nothing wrong with that, but they have to love themselves enough to try to work on this themselves so that they can actually heal and actually show up in a relationship the way that they want to. But this is outside of your control. But what you can control is yourself and figuring out what is best for you, and you already know what that is. But the most important thing that you need to do is to commit to that and know that you are doing this for yourself and your betterment. And when you are finally able to actually heal from this relationship, and when you are ready, you will find somebody who will love and be committed to you, and it will feel natural to be in the relationship. I hope that you did enjoy today's video. If you did, please make sure to hit that like button. If you're new here, make sure to subscribe, and I'll see you in the next video.